I'm usually not bad at these. Can't seem to get it right today. So, I'm trying to do a character biography for the character in our story, Therese, who is an alchemist starting out in episode 1, a student in the inner colonies about 150,000 years in the future from now, where we've colonized space and she has a favorite pastime, which would be alchemy, which would be changing one thing to another using some chemistry or some science. And it's about as popular as it is now. So she's probably the only one who cares about the true nature of things. And that means she's a smart cookie and an introvert. And she's got this professor. Episode 1 starts out and it's typical student back and forth forgetting shit and runs up on her professor Albatross. And Albatross, I'm pretty sure he knows everything in the book and everything that's not written in them too. And he kind of hints that he knows stuff that he shouldn't probably know. And so the student keeps coming back and he fails everyone pretty much. There's a reason for him failing people. It has something to do with his what do you call it? He's got like a neuroses, I suppose, about success in the field of science. Kind of corruptible success. And so like hungry people are like the people he accepts. And Rue's the hungriest for information, for answers. And because he seems to have the wealth, like the well of knowledge she's after. Okay, she wants something very specific in the story. Since this is video documentary for Project Starside and I'm the author, I'll go ahead and say it. And it'll be... I really don't think I should care about spoilers considering... Whatever. She'll eventually get her way, is the point. The alchemy can actually do what she's intending to do, which is create the life she's always wanted. And it's too bad. The character fantasizes about life the way she sees it, not the way that it is, which she fell in love with the life initially, what it was when, parents were around and you have your childhood memories and people hang on to that kind of stuff. And some people let go, some people grow up, and other people take it to the umpteenth degree and try to preserve it and maybe even recreate it. And there are healthy ways, like starting new families and moving on and showing the next generation how to do it, or giving them the courage to fail. And then there's her way, which would be to actually do it, to actually recreate the entire scenario. But not just a scenario, but make it perfect for everyone who's there, who she wouldn't want to remember. She wouldn't want anyone to remember the lives they actually had, because most of it's disappointing, and she really does not like to be disappointed, especially when it's something that you invest in and you shouldn't want, but everyone kind of still wants. So there's like extreme character motivations and loss. It's like a grief tied thing where she wants things she's had and doesn't see a reason why that's a bad thing. No parents around or people to stop her from thinking otherwise. Rue is an alchemist in the Alliance, so that means she's got the connections to actually get some of this stuff done. And so you go to the academy to be able to go on expeditions. Expeditions allow you to leave your home system and you get credit towards whatever you're doing, and then you also get to legitimacy in whatever you're doing. So most people just go and visit derelict planets, why they fail, come back, submit a report, get a final grade based on what they glean from the planets that they visit, and then it's like core samples, air samples, like soil samples, and why it's not sustainable. And in this class, it's just typical stuff. But for her, she doesn't want to stop at recreating conditions. She wants to recreate material, which is why alchemy is such a big thing for her. To move the system the way she wants to move it, she has to understand the nature of everything, and everything, including the bonds that we're not supposed to know about. We're not supposed to know how all of our synapses fire, and why we think what we think and how we think it and all that kind of stuff. She's obsessed with the idea that she can recreate a memory, and she calls this idea paradise. And obviously, anyone can see where this would be going is a fantasy which is dangerous to envision and to set as a real goal, because it's not healthy to do these kinds of things. And because she doesn't make it ever known to the group she ends up being a part of for Project Starside, she joins a crew because her and her professor intercept a message that gives off a special, like a code that shouldn't make sense in nature. And so it's the first sign that there could actually be something to an expedition instead of just the regular failed worlds. And why the Alliance allows these expeditions is to eventually find clues to the past and what happened to Earth, because Earth is just gone. And Earth doesn't really particularly excite Rue, because everything they had on Earth they have everywhere else. But artifacts from Earth and places from your origin can help you discover missing links to DNA, RNA, stuff like that, and how old and what changes took place when for her. And that's very important for her science to lock down exactly what she wants to know and change. And she can change those things only by getting the data. And to get the hands on the data, you actually have to have a successful expedition to one of these planets that has artifacts intact that are from the original Earth. And most colonists, like vessels and stuff like that stuff is like gold that got lost during the original colonial age. Like, probably around the first 100 years after we left Earth. And so it's a long time ago, basically. Like, it's a needle in a haystack kind of situation. But the findings are very important to the Alliance, because the Alliance wants to get ahead of the people who would hunt down those things for other nefarious purposes. The purposes being legitimacy. Some people have political. Some people use the ties to the past as a political bludgeon against their political enemies, and it's a very powerful symbol in the war effort going on currently. So the atmosphere is it's the Alliance, and the Alliance is like the intercolonial planets, and then there's the Federation. The Federation is the peacekeeping trade route, opening shipping lanes, keepers who protects the roads that make safe the inner and outer colony bridges. And it's just space out there, so you need someone. And they're the second biggest force there is, so they need them. And then there's the insurrection, who just think that the Alliance is lying about everything, covering up what happened to Earth, that they know things. And then there's a vaccination plot too, and Rue happens to be one of the characters who has a rejection. Like, some people get rejected by the vaccination, space vaccines. So space vaccines work to help you not freeze to death, not get super sick, not get your bones jellied. Like, it's actually kind of important. But more important is that like 10% of the people who take it become one of like five terrible things. Like, you can become a dwarf, just you will never grow past kid. All the vaccines basically make you stop aging at 25, and you'll die from accidents or something else, but not natural causes anymore. You'll basically be 25 for the rest of your life in this universe. And the vaccinations, what they did to ruin her family, or she is a child of a Lorelei rejection. Lorelei being the vaccine, and the rejection being she became a chimera. So sometimes you can not. They call it mutation, and you could turn into something tied to whatever derivative that the formula had. So there's an animal derivative in your bloodline somewhere, and you become closer to that animal than human sometimes. And she got lucky. All she has is horns that she can grow her hair out and hide. And it's like goat horns, by the way. So it's a character thing where she's stubborn. You know, goat stubborn, blah blah blah. And so this is her introduction, essentially. She's a chimera. She's aware of the rejections. She's aware that her parents were rejected by the Lorelei vaccine. And she's aware of the political dichotomy between Federation, insurrection, and what's it called? Alliance. In this universe, she is the ship's. So she gets tied to the crew who ends up investigating this signal, because she's essentially one of the only alchemists who can break down materials and identify just about any element that exists, because she studies that stuff. She is a child of the Kabbalion, which is the original Hermetic tomes that humanity still study now. It's the basis of creation, one of the bases of creation, and one of the pillars of science. So she takes that and she studies plants, people, things, and whatever she can get her hands on that some people have manufactured. And there are knockoff vaccines that don't do anything, and then there's some that do worse. And some people do it worse on purpose to make all the vaccines look bad. So it's like a, typical humans, basically. And she has no love of humanity, because chimeras are basically like raced out, like they are prejudiced against. And the same thing goes for the dwarfs. So dwarfism, chimeranism, there's a special progeria type that makes people age or de-age or become monsters, and some disfigurement. And she doesn't like the hand she's dealt in life, basically. Her parents were dealt, and the situation in the universe is messed up because it's all over the universe and galaxies, and no one signed up for this kind of stuff. Like, they're born afflicted. So her story is based around the desire to change that. And the way she wants to do that is through alchemy, getting the artifacts, and some point down the line create a place she calls paradise or Eden. Because she likes the old stories. Like, she's a studied student, and one of her weaknesses is history. And history is a romance to her. People who know things are romantic, and people who remember things are romantic to her, because essentially everyone in science is afraid to be forgotten in this series. They don't want to be defined by the generation. They want to define the generation. Most of the people who go on expeditions believe in that in some loose sense or some dream form, and this is her place. Now she has a dream. Every character about has a dream, and there's a place they go in their dreams, and they visit. And sometimes you go as yourself, and sometimes you go as a older or younger version of yourself, and you visit this town. And in this town, she figured out she's dreaming pretty quickly, and but you can't escape the dream just by realizing it's a dream and waking up. Many characters go through this, including the head of the alliance himself, the admiral, who ends up in the same dream. And there's like many dreamers within this dream who are in the universe that we're set in, 150,000, 2024 years in the future. Like they are all dreaming at the same time and get inducted to be shown the future, essentially by like an entity or a dimensional entity that sees the future coming, that these people probably need to get together and know each other. And it's a good thing because Rue meets people in this dream who have secrets in this town. So there's plenty of stuff going on. Every town and every dreamer, every person in town has an unsettled past or something they need to see in a town or resolve. And if you can't resolve it, you get trapped or killed and repurposed somehow. Like you become a part of the story of the town. And then there are hauntings, and her haunting specifically is the truth. Most people get hauntings that are related to some historical event, but her haunting is special in that she runs into an original character who happens to know everything. And it's not like the teacher's everything. It's like before everything became available in the future, everything, because this town is based on Earth, and she realizes pretty quickly she's dreaming of Earth. And it's pretty significant because everyone who is in the future all know that if you find Earth, everything that could tell you what happened to it, anything that points to the answer, any clue, could win you favor with the Alliance, and that you'd get high rank and you're set up for the rest of your life and blah blah blah. So I think she's one of the only 3 people who realize that they're dreaming in this dream. And so she takes advantage of it and plays dumb and hides her agenda while she's investigating all these smart people. You know, she looks like a student, like a young girl. To be honest, kind of like the voice actress. She just defies her age in her looks. It does not look the same as she speaks or thinks. She's way past her age in intellect and spiritually. And she's a past dwelling kind as well. And she sees the future kind of forming in the decisions being made in this town, and it's on purpose. So the person she meets is a derivation of my original character, and my original character studied everything because people needed to know things about, or people needed to know just about everything to stop a virus, which is part of what really happened to Earth. Essentially, humanity had to leave Earth because a virus got so bad. And it wasn't about vaccines or anything like that. It happened to be that this one was created and it was perfect. It's a doomsday kind. You can't run out this clock kind of doomsday. And so this town is one of the only places on Earth you could run to and survive long enough to have peace, even. Because to get access to the town, it's constantly on fire. Underground is on fire. This place called Centralia in Pennsylvania. It's a real place, and it's toxic to live in. And if you try to leave in the dream, you get taken by whatever's out there that can't get in because it's so toxic. But in real life, a lot of it's based on the real life stuff anyway. So this is one of my favorite parts about the story. It's very based on real life stuff. And so the rules are different. Like, she's gone back in time, essentially, is what she's thinking in her dream. So, in a way, she can technically glean things that help her future, help her better understand why things are the way they are in her future. She's talking to the right person, because my character helped design the outline of how the vaccine works and how chimerism got involved. Was My character was making an arc, like a genome arc, where you could take all of the potential animals and races and ethnicities to space and start over. And he was alone in this effort, so it had to be done in secret. And people don't really like him because he technically was infected with the same thing everyone else was infected with, but he just had a different reaction to it than everyone else, which left him with his humanity, but also with the inability to forget anything, age, sleep, or hunger. And technically, all of the mutations become this way eventually. They stop needing things, and then they get kind of melancholic about it, and that makes them go insane. A lot of people just can't cope with it and become monsters because they die going insane. Entropy is a heavy factor in the story, where if you people who live long enough past their due date start to hear things, and they call it the void song. And the void song is death. It's natural death. And once you hear it, it pushes you to understand truths you're not supposed to live long enough to understand. And so most people just go insane with the knowledge that there are spirits and there are things going on that they don't understand, or that things are being covered up that are true that you can't necessarily prove. And people typically go missing over this kind of stuff. The government doesn't like the idea of people knowing too much about the past in a recreational way, because it can be too easily politicized and used as a weapon against the legitimacy of the expeditions, the colonial effort, and the future of humanity is on the line, essentially, when whoever gets to Earth first, essentially. So Rue meets a person, this kid. His name is let's see, what was his name? Eglin. Eglin is the librarian who doesn't remember, like, anyone who comes to the town doesn't remember where they came from, or who they are, basically. They think they remember, they have like little, they're foggy. And so people don't remember when they got there, they just remember finding a job there or being destitute. And so they live their lives there if they stay. And he happens to just remember showing up, finding the library, and working in the library. That's where Rue finds him. And he tells her stuff that normal people don't know in the future about the virus. And because it's his current time, so he's able to just be like, oh, it's not common knowledge. Like, why don't you know this? Like, don't you live here, kind of thing. And he tells her that this town is special because the infected can't smell people in there because the smoke rising from underground. There's a coal fire underneath the town all the time. So people are safe. But of course you can die getting lost out there because there's constantly ashfall and there's fog, and once that stuff rolls in, you can't see who's who or what's going on, and some people get paranoid and just kill you just because they think you're one of the monsters or you're going to mug them. Anything can happen in this town because there are absolutely predators around, like people who prey on other people. And Eglin has the backstory as well, and it's very tied to my OC's character, like my original character. So they go to this diner and talk about. See, it's a date to this kid, but to Rue, it's her trying to discover what time she's in and what's important, what's not. And this kid's just glad to be asked any questions by the opposite sex, to be honest, because people in this town don't generally look for companionship anymore. They're too busy self-loathing how they got there and why they don't can't remember things, and the things that they can remember make them suffer. They're haunted by their past. Everyone gets haunted. And when she finds out like meat is delivered fresh to this diner, she wants to know where it's coming from, because if it's not coming from like a farm, which shouldn't be able to survive out here, you know, then she's wondering how people keep getting their food. So, following this trail, she asks Eglin, and Eglin says that they have a butcher, and there's a meat packing plant nearby where they get most of their food from, like most of their like product. And so she wants to go see it. So she sneaks into the truck when the delivery comes with him, and he has no idea why she's sneaking into it. To him, it's like stranger who comes from a different time, and Miru's pretty, so it's pretty easy to trick him, and not really trick him, but he goes with her because he's enchanted by her. She's mysterious, and he's mysterious as well in a different way, where she's interested in how people can forget who they are. So it's interesting to keep him with her. And they go to the meatpacking plant, and then they get attacked by a giant plant. And they start running because it's guarding the actual meatpacking plant. They tried to follow the person in, but the person happened to get by without any of those issues. Because they were sneaking around, they were too far out, and once the door shut, they had to find a way in. That wasn't the normal way in. And the plant had a human face. And it was like really tall. And it could take your voice. Like if someone was yelling for help, it would actually just like pretend to be that person if it killed them. And then once you got close enough, it just put you in a spy trap situation. So this was like a makeshift guard. And technically it's posted outside. You're not supposed to go to the meatpacking plant because they say like dogs. But in reality, it's like you're going to get killed by something that my OC made to guard the place, because he's developing genome stuff in there. So that's what he's doing. He's cloning meat. That's why I know anything about cloning. So it's a flash cloning process, and that's just a front. Like, he's not doing it for money. He's doing it so he can stay in the town and use the underground facilities beneath the packing plant, or hide it underneath the packing plant. Use it as a base of operations to study. See, my character is in Centralia to study the immaterial dysplasia, which is said to cause cancer, like an uncontrollable human condition that we know very little about. It's on the very basis of life, next to bacteria and everything else, but it's in a separate tree called Archaea. He's here to study the extremophile Archaea that only exists in the most extreme conditions. And that would be the hot springs that bubble up from the fires underground. And it's only naturally occurring, so you have to go to a place where it naturally occurs. So it turns out everyone in Centralia eventually develops cancer. So my character takes advantage of this to try to explain how cancer works. And that's what he's doing there. Him and some people were trying to do research and help, the world move on from that kind of thing. And, some people thought that the original virus was supposed to be a cure for the cancer. And I think that's honestly how a lot of stuff is going to play out in real life. Anyways, so getting taken captive after the plant fails to kill them, they actually are useful to my character who catches them. And my character notices immediately there's something up with Eglin, and then that this other character Rue is a stranger, and strangers showing up is a bad sign. Like, actually, there's a contract with the local sheriff's office to keep things quiet about the meatpacking plant. So the sheriff shows up, and a deputy was killed by the plant trying to chase after the kids. And they immediately cover it up and come up with a cover story in front of the kids. And then the kids are like, well, okay. You know, so they realize, they're probably screwed. They're captured and everything. And my character has uses for them and tells them just about everything they need to know.